catastrophic Hurricane Ian in the process of coming ashore in the southwest Florida area. And look at this devastating storm surge in Naples, Florida. A road with vehicles completely inundated. And you can see how the spray on top of the water, the wave action, and the debris in the water. Can you imagine if you're standing next to your vehicle, how high that water would be, how much of you would be underwater? Here again is another shot at Naples. There are a lot of just inland waterways that are not immediate Gulf front that are experiencing the push of water. It is not just a Gulf front, beachfront problem, storm surge. It's a very location-specific hazard, and look at the debris. It's not just going to be water. The water's going to be moving, and it's going to be carrying debris. And in Fort Myers Beach, the Weather Service has relayed that they're getting a lot of social media posts that storm surge flooding, the salt water. The Gulf of Mexico has come on to the barrier island of Fort Myers Beach and has come up to the roofs of some homes. Now, in the northern eye wall, you're going to be getting that in Venice before too long, and you're on the northern side, you may never get into the eye. Now, someone who very well could get into the eye before too much longer is our Jim Cantori, who's in the northeastern eye wall. And Jim, it's going to be rough for a little while longer, but you will start to get a decrease in the winds, but we're going to have to urge people not to go out in the eye because not everybody's going to have the same length of break. How has that northeastern eye wall been?
Yeah, and the other thing too, Doc, is, what happens to that water that's been sitting on the western side of Charlotte Harbor? All right, once we go westerly on the other side, it's going to all slosh this way. I've seen that a lot when I've been on the Outer Banks of Cape Hatteras on the sound side, where the water is pushed toward the mainland, and then the winds reverse, and we get the sound side flooding as a result of that. It's kind of the same thing. We're just going to push the water this way. Like having, water on a plate, and you're just tipping the plate different ways with respect to the wind and bringing the water back that way. So that's two reasons why we don't want you to go out, because we could have just as ferocious a west end. Remember, this is a very well-defined structural category 4 hurricane. All right? So there's absolutely no reason to believe that the backside won't be as bad as the first. And as a matter of fact, what may be interesting on the backside is, even though the storm may move to our northeast, unless it weakens, we're going to take more wind that's been over the water versus more of it that's been over land. In other words, we've had to wait for all of our wind to come from the south and east side, so it's been over a lot more land. Now that wind direction will change, where it's going to spend most of its time over water, and it won't be dampened down a little bit. So, Doc, you tell me, we could, if this thing, like I said, doesn't rapidly weaken, we could take worse winds on the west side. I don't know if you guys can hear the wind in my mic here, but it's pretty ferocious out here. You can hear it whistling down the street from time to time. Also, the visibility. I mean, we're in one of these real heavy rain and wind bands right now where the visibility is so doggone low. And as a result of that, I can't really see much, especially with these goggles on. But in terms of, big, intense structural damage, you look at wind like that, just off the way there, there's a tree down. I don't see the roof damage at all on this particular building behind me here. And again, remember, I can only see about 50 to 70 yards here. And even at times I can't see that. And then you look over, and then you look over at the tops of some of these metal roofs, and they seem to be holding. Remember, Florida has really strict building codes, and a lot of people build above that code. And this is why, all right? Because they want to have something to come home to. They don't want to have a wrecked house. They don't want water into their house, especially if they can't get back because of debris and restrictions and whatnot, and that mold just starts to accumulate and accumulate. Either way, there's going to be some damage, and in some cases major structural damage. Whether you've got an old home or a new home, it's just that Mother Nature doesn't really get choosy. She takes whatever she wants, unfortunately, and really can wreck it. So, guys, we're still into this eye wall. At times we get some pretty nasty gusts coming right up US 41 and through here from the south, but not much has changed, if you will, for the last 30 or 40 minutes or so. Occasionally a palm front will fly by, but At least it's not a piece of my house. Anyway, guys, back to you in the studio.
Yeah, so Jim, at the airport there in Punta Gorda, that is off to your east, and that is a little bit inland, and they've had gusts over 100 miles an hour, but they don't have as much open exposure with water, and you have some taller structures. Right, so the wind gusts are likely stronger in and around where Jim is, and higher up on some of those buildings. So this has got to be doing a tremendous amount of catastrophic wind damage along with the storm surge. The 3 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center says that the center of Ian is about to make landfall. It could be just moments away when the center has been declared to have crossed the coastline, but that hasn't quite happened yet. But the area around Captiva is in the eye. 155 mile an hour Category 4 hurricane. Just for reference, just for comparison, Charlie came ashore in about this same area with max winds of 150 miles an hour as Category 4. Charlie's pressure was higher. It was a smaller storm. This is a bigger storm with a lower pressure at 937. North-northeast at 9, so it hasn't made a dramatic change in path. There's a little bit of wobbling going on. 9 miles an hour is not very quick. Here's the big picture of it. So it is about to affect a lot of people inland in central Florida. And just now coming up on the screen here is this big area that's wrapped in purple. And I want to describe what's going on here. This is an extreme wind warning that is for this northern, northeastern, and eastern eye wall area. This is just like a tornado warning in terms of what you should do. This entire area needs to be taking shelter, lowest level, most interior room, or lowest dry level, most interior room, if there is any water in your vicinity, from salt water, from fresh water, whatever the case may be. But you got to get away from windows, away from exterior walls. You want to maybe put a helmet on and put a mattress over you. This is the take final shelter for the winds of a major hurricane. This is issued when we have a major hurricane coming ashore. So this includes Sanibel and Fort Myers Beach, Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Englewood, going up to Arcadia. They had damage in Hurricane Charlie, but this is going to be a much wider area of damage. So it's not a case where you can, well, I hope that the eye misses me and then I won't get wind damage. No, this is moving slowly. It is larger. It is very intense up at the Cat 4 or 5 threshold. So this entire area at risk for life-threatening winds. So again, that extreme wind warning until 6 p.m. in many portions of Charlotte, DeSoto, and Lee counties. Now, looking at the visible, you can see how the cloud-filled eye does not mean it is losing much punch. It is just a matter of the dynamics of the hurricane. But the more impactful dynamics of the hurricane that are going on here are not just the wind, where we've gotten at, these are just at the airports that in Fort Myers, that's not even in the eye wall. It's east of there, starting to get in the eye wall, but have gusted over 100 miles an hour in some places. But look at Venice, you're getting an offshore wind, a lot of lightning in that northwestern eye wall. You're never going to get in the eye. Fort Myers Airport is not likely to get in the eye, at least not for long. Punta Gorda, you probably will. So those are just the airport observations, but here are some of the more recent observations. Punta Gorda, you peaked at 106 mile an hour gusts, and then we've got Fort Myers Beach relayed by the Weather Service, multiple social media posts showing storm surge levels up to first-story roofs. Had an elevated observation there in Naples of 105 miles an hour. Now, this is earlier in Fort Myers Beach. This is the Lanikai Resort that is on the other side of the street there. It's Gulf front, but now the Gulf has moved onto the barrier island in Fort Myers Beach, and this is about 6 feet above the ground that the camera was mounted, and this is when the water wasn't quite that high, but it has gotten higher since. You can see the debris in the water, how fast moving the water is, the waves on top of it. This is not just going to get structures wet, it is going to gut some structures, destroy some structures. This is the worst case hurricane scenario for Fort Myers Beach.